The following recording was created by the Regional Educational Laboratory Southeast at Florida State University. Information and materials for this recording are supported by the Institute of Education Sciences, National Center for Education Evaluation and Regional Assistance, Regional Educational Laboratory Southeast at Florida State University. Contract ED-IES-17-C-0011 as resources and examples for the listener's convenience. Their inclusion is not intended as an endorsement by the Regional Educational Laboratory Southeast or its funding source, the Institute of Education Sciences. In addition, the activities and instructional model discussed in this recording are not intended to mandate, direct, or control a state's local educational agencies or schools' specific instructional content, academic achievement system and assessments, curriculum, or program of instruction. State and local programs may use any instructional content, achievement system and assessments, curriculum, or program of instruction they wish.
Hello, welcome to our conversation on the story behind the study. I'm Diana Sharp. I manage the REL Southeast partnership with Florida Virtual School, and I'm delighted to be here today with April Fleetwood and John Hughes.
Hi, everyone. I'm April Fleetwood. I'm the Senior Manager of Research and Evaluation at Florida Virtual School.
And hello, all. I'm John Hughes, Director of the REL Southeast and lead author of this study.
You know, when I think back on how this study started, it almost seems like the start of a movie where the characters think they know what's in store for them, but they really have no idea.
That's right. And it's also like one of those movies where everyone knows what treasure they want to find. But the first question is, where in the world do we even start?
That's a great description, April. And I want to stress that the idea for this study came from Florida Virtual School. As a regional educational lab, our mission is to research our partners' most burning questions. So our first step with our partners is to ask them, what are your goals?
Exactly. And from the start, our Florida Virtual partners would tell me, we are totally committed to having the best supports for our teachers possible. Our vision of perfection for our professional development system is that every teacher knows the best strategies for helping all students have maximum success.
Yes, we also know that our teachers are creative and are developing new strategies to help students all the time. So we have to make sure that we find out about those strategies and share them with all the teachers.
From a researcher standpoint, there's all kinds of fascinating questions to investigate about how to know which strategies are the most successful. But what we realized is, we really have to back up and start earlier. We need to make sure we really understand how teachers influence student success in online courses.
Yes, finding the right starting point was key, and it wasn't obvious at first. April, I remember being at one of your FLVS professional development conferences and talking with some of your leaders who said, we think we have some teachers who are more successful than other teachers, but we don't really know. Our students come to our courses with very different backgrounds, skills, and goals for their own success. So all of those things contribute to students' final grades and exam scores in a course.
Yep. We knew that through identifying the most successful teachers, we could figure out what strategies they might have created that weren't widely known. But we weren't sure how to know for certain that we were identifying them in a rigorous way. We didn't know how to tell whether it is true that some teachers actually do get better outcomes than others. And it's not just the luck of the draw that they have more highly skilled students than other teachers. And that's important if we are ever going to find out who the most successful teachers are and how we can improve our professional development and training to continually get closer to an ideal world of supporting our teachers.
And that's where we at the REL decided we could help. There are definitely research-based models out there on how you look for the most effective teachers. But again, back to the question of where to start, we realized that there wasn't much research on an even earlier question. How much influence does a teacher have on a student's success in an online course?
Yes, that was a real surprise to realize that no one had really measured that. We all know that many things determine whether a student succeeds, and some of those things depend on the student. And we also know that teachers matter, and what teachers do can affect a student's motivation and learning.
We just didn't know how big of an influence teachers might have when you factor in all the things that are up to students and how much they learn, or that are affected by how much a student knows coming into the course. So we finally decided that our first step in this treasure hunt was to really understand how much influence teachers could have on student success and what parts of student success they could influence the most.
Those of us who work in online learning know that our field is young, and we do feel like pioneers all the time. So it was exciting to learn from the REL that we would be some of the first people exploring these questions, specifically in the world of online learning.
So then we were off. Research is often a matter of connecting the dots. We knew that this first study would not get us to the final treasure. We wouldn't know at the end of this study what strategies the most successful teachers were using and which ones might be new and important to share with other teachers. But we would have our first dot in the trail of dots that could lead us there.
That's right. With this first study, we'd be able to see how much influence teachers in an online course have and start learning where they had the most influence. We could get an initial picture of how much variation we see with our measurement processes and the statistical techniques that we have available, techniques that let us mathematically distinguish how much of a student's success is likely coming from things the teacher is doing.
We picked biology as the course to examine in this study for several reasons. First, we already had some other research partnerships looking at algebra courses, and we wanted to make sure that our research wasn't just limited to algebra. We want to be sure that what we learn in our research program as a whole is broad and applicable to different subject areas.
Biology is also a core course, so we knew there would be a wide range of students enrolled. That made it more likely that we would see a wider range of student success and their outcomes, making it easier for our statistical techniques to parcel out the teacher's influence on those outcomes from other influences.
So we were all really eagerly awaiting the initial results of the first run of statistical analyses. And we had no idea how surprising those initial results would be.
I remember that all too well. Our first impression was, wow, the differences we saw across teachers and the student outcomes, once you factor out all aspects of the student's success that are not under the teacher's control, were much smaller than we had anticipated.
In fact, we wondered if maybe FLVS had already achieved, without knowing it, their ideal vision of essentially helping every teacher know how to be as successful as every other teacher.
I know. In a way, it was excellent news to verify that we had prepared our teachers so well that no matter which teacher students were assigned to, they all had about the same chance of succeeding on end-of-segment exams. But we still thought there were probably some teachers who had developed some unique strategies that could be making a difference for their students.
And in fact, that's what we found when we dug deeper. We compared our results to other studies in the literature about variations across teachers and student success in traditional brick-and-mortar classes. We ran even more analyses on the data. We realized that, hey, some of these differences that we thought were too minor to be interesting actually may be signaling that there are some teachers who may be teaching in unique ways that are worth investigating.
Especially in the areas that seemed like they might be most related to the influence on students' motivation and persistence.
And that made sense to us at FLVS just from working in this world of online learning for so long. We were really happy that the difference across teachers and their influence on students' exam scores really did look minor, even after digging deeper. That meant that we had prepared all of our teachers in a consistent way through our professional learning and instructional model to help students achieve on those exams. But we weren't surprised that there might be something going on with the differences in other aspects of a student's success.
In particular, as you can see in the summary of our results in this infographic, we found more variation in the amount of time students take to complete the course, depending on which teacher they have. If you rank teachers according to how long students take to complete their courses, teachers at the higher end of that ranking have students who are completing the course at least 2.5 weeks faster than teachers at the lower end of the ranking. 2.5 weeks is the size of the difference if you look at teachers at the 75th percentile in the rankings and teachers at the 25th percentile.
The study also found a difference that could be worth investigating in terms of whether students complete the course or drop out.
Yes, in that case, when you rank teachers on their influence on student completion rate, teachers at the 75th percentile and teachers at the 25th percentile differ by about 9 percentage points in terms of how many students complete the course. We originally thought the difference would only be interesting to investigate if it was at least 10 percentage points. But after comparing to some other research, we now believe that it's possible that this 9-point difference means that some teachers have unique strategies for influencing student completion rate, and that those strategies could be worth exploring.
But then, just as these final results and their implications started to take shape, we got the biggest surprise of all, the same bad surprise that everyone in the world got.
The
pandemic
pandemic
hit.
hit.
Now, unlike other researchers, we were lucky with this study that the pandemic did not make it hard for us to get data or run the study. We already had our data by the time it hit. And for us, the pandemic has made us want to rethink the next steps in our research.
You mentioned earlier, Diana, that research is often a series of connecting the dots. And now the pandemic has shown us that there are whole new trails of dots we hadn't even considered before.
We know that your chief goal, April, at FLVS is still the same. It's that treasure hunt for identifying teachers who may have invented some new and effective strategies that you want to share with all your teachers. If the pandemic hadn't happened, then the next stop on the trail from this study would be more obvious. Start exploring those differences we found in students' completion rates and completion times to see if there are some special strategies teachers at the higher ends of the rankings are using to affect those outcomes.
But now, with the pandemic, we have to consider whether that next step is the most urgent or fruitful one to follow.
Yes, and it's a conversation we're still having. Pursuing the findings of this study on completion rate and completion time may, in fact, be the next step we decide to take with this research trail in our treasure hunt. But we want to hear from our teachers. We know that our FLVS teachers were prepared for this pandemic much more than teachers who had to switch from brick and mortar to remote lessons. We already had our lessons in place, but our teachers had to deal with a massive influx of students all at once.
And you had students coming in all of a sudden in the middle of the semester.
Yes, and we saw enormous growth in particular at our elementary level.
So that raises a question. Are there new and more urgent trails to follow on your treasure hunt for effective strategies in online learning? Did your teachers invent some new strategies during the pandemic, particularly with elementary students, that would be of more practical significance to explore than the differences we saw pre-pandemic in terms of students' time to completion and completion rate?
This is a great time to be open to all sorts of possibilities for your research efforts.
Ideally, we could do it all. We could start exploring those differences that showed up in this study and see what we might learn about strategies that led to them. And we could formulate new questions about teacher strategies that arose because of the experience we all had during the pandemic.
To get back to the movie analogy, it's important to decide whether to do a straight sequel to this study or write a brand new script.
Either way, I know this study on teacher influences has already influenced our thinking about our treasure hunt. It's definitely helped us grow in our ability to do research. We really appreciate that the REL Southeast is the type of partner that helps us develop our own questions based on our most important goals and helps us be a part of the work in answering those questions.
Thanks, April. We are glad that we can help, and we're really looking forward to continuing this conversation with you and continuing our work with you.
And we're really eager to learn what you hear from your teachers about this study. We can't wait to hear what questions they'd love for your research program to tackle next.
Thank you. I can't wait to hear from them either. Thank you to those of you who have listened to this conversation. If you're one of our FLVS teachers, please email me with your thoughts about this study and ideas for the next steps in our research. You can email me at afleetwood@flvs.net.
And if you're not an FLVS teacher, but you're interested in talking with us at the REL Southeast further about this work, we'd love to talk to you. You can email me at dsharp@rmcres.com.